Hello, everyone. Today we will be discussing the Leadership Experience, chapters 8 through 15. This course has been great to me. I'll go ahead into the video. All right, so leading change. Change, as we know, is inevitable. It is something that we cannot run or hide from. I'm a millennial myself, so we went from flip phones to what's that, the sidekick to the smartphones where we could touch the screen. And now, organizations throughout that process, I'm sure, especially, looking at it and reflecting from now and then, you know, leaders in organizations have to act upon those changes in order for them to stay relevant. And naturally, employees in the organization, they may resist, they may reject these things because they may feel as though it's going to harm their job or, put them in a position where they have to work extra hard and they just might not be willing to do so. So, in these times, this is where change leaders, agents of change, they must build a vision, okay? And this vision helps people find a purpose. And once they have purpose, this is where you implement it, you act upon it, and you help encourage them to want to do that for themselves and motivate them to do, what is right for the organization or business in this case. All right, so change strategies. As I was pretty much mentioning, when it comes to vision, mission, and strategy and implementation, you have to have a vision in order for people to see where they're going. Essentially, like for example, if somebody told me to go to Wendy's down the road, down the road where there's multiple Wendy's, maybe not so much now because that in itself is changing. I've noticed that some Wendy's are being closed left and right, but for example, I'm just going to go ahead and continue with that. Like, I need to know where exactly, which road, give me the direction so I know the vision so I can see where I need to be. And then the mission, you want to give them a mission, you want to give them purpose in order for them to be motivated and encouraged to even act upon it. And you want to also give them steps without the knowledge of the purpose without, a step-by-step process, people can get lost and that can cause stress, tension, and, when there's tension, when there's stress, people get stuck and you don't want that in an organization. So you have to give them the steps, you have to give them the purpose, you have to give them the vision, and that helps with the execution. All right, next slide. All right. So, leadership communication. The foundation of leadership, I would say, is communication, 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 and it goes the same with relationships, whether it be a romantic one, family. If the communication is broken, it can cause issues and it can cause breakage, so things could be broken apart, things will be misunderstood. So you just want to create the space where open communication is available to each party involved, especially in an organization. And there's different types. There's leader-centered, follower-centered, and emotional connection. Leader-centered, you would focus on the leader and like reports to the leader. Let's say if it's a governance meeting, you want to give them all the details, and you want to be like straightforward with those details because leaders, they have of a lot of information and that gets brought to them, so you want to break it up in a way that it is easy for them to digest. And follower centered, it could be more based on customers feedback and overall follower centered to where you just want to focus on the customer or employees in a sense to nourish that relationship, which ultimately leads to emotional connection because people will feel connected, they will feel understood, and once they feel understood, it makes a big difference. Okay, so we're going to go ahead to the next slide. Communication skills, all right? So with communication skills, there are so many layers that come alongside it. You want to be an active listener so you can know what answer am I providing? Am I being direct? Is this the correct, proper process? Is this the correct stage in the project? You just want to be able to actively listen so you can properly act on that, you know? And then as far as nonverbal awareness is concerned, you want to pay attention to the nonverbal as well as verbal cues, but mostly, with nonverbal cues, you want to also pay attention to see if they're, excited about the project. Are they disinterested? Are they interested? Like, these are the tools that you can use to make better decisions, pick the proper project manager, delegate it to the right employee. This is important, as well as feedback loops. Feedback loops could help offer, a SWOT analysis, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats. This is feedback loops are imperative, I would say, in organizations because it truly helps make the best decisions as well as open communication. If you have like an open door policy, you also have the opportunity to find out where the opportunities are, where the threats are, where the strengths are, So you want to implement all layers of communication skills because it helps make better decisions. Leading teams. Leading teams takes time and effort. You want to nurture teams, you want to have a shared goal. You want to have accountability going in order for people to, do the right thing and assume responsibility or ownership when it's necessary. And you also want to trust them so that they can feel like their choices and decisions, it truly matters, because sometimes if the trust isn't there, people may get aloof. They might not be as interested in being a part of the team, and they may not act upon certain things or speak up when necessary. They may go mute, which is not good, because you want to have a team dynamic where everybody's involved, everybody's brainstorming in a sense to create the best opportunities for the organization. And diversity is so important as well because with diversity it helps open up different perspectives. Okay, now so we're going to go into the next slide. All right, so clear roles. For clear roles, or team effectiveness, I should say, let's start off with the subject title: Team Effectiveness, Clear Roles, Open Communication, Conflict Resolution, Collaboration. All of this helps effectiveness because, with team members, there's going to be issues because, there's pillars to it. There's the storming, norming, performing, and adjourning, especially in projects, when you're first starting off with new team members that you may not be too familiar with, and you're dealing with different personalities that you may not even be, accustomed to or used to, and it can cause friction, and that's normal, and that's why leaders should always be able to step in and assert themselves. Sometimes they should use their hard power, and sometimes they should use their soft power. It depends on the dynamic, and it kind of, leads the team into the right direction, or you could allow the team members to get to know each other, but sometimes it does take a leader or a supervisor to chime in order to get the team, in the right space of performing, and actually, getting to know each other in a better light. And that is where open communication comes in because, the team lead or the leader of the organization or the supervisor, they can, create a space where there's open communication where people can be more comfortable with one another and open up and just be transparent. And once transparency is there, I feel like that's the best way to resolve conflict because you already know what it is then. And then there's no reason to have tension. You get what I'm saying? So it kind of creates that collaborative uh, atmosphere for everyone within the organization or that's working, on that project on an internal or an external, basis. So I trust those are the best ways to be an effective team player and create team effectiveness. Next slide. All right, leadership diversity. Okay, so leadership diversity is a way to have inclusive leadership. It's a cultural intelligence, which is needed, especially in a world, especially in America, I would say, because there's so many people coming from, different countries, different backgrounds, different upbringings, different religions. So you want to have a cultural intelligence where, people are open and they understand and respect other cultures. And this is how businesses, flourish in a sense because if the organization has like this cultural intelligence, it can lead to more customers. It could lead to more people being comfortable and more loyal to that organization just because they are mirroring or resonating with what that organization stands for. And that is very important. And it reduces bias, as I was mentioning. It truly does reduce bias. So that is it for leadership diversity. And we're going to go ahead and talk about the next slide, which is diversity benefits. I trust that, diversity benefits can lead to better decision making. It can create innovation because you're looking at different perspectives. People maybe from a different country, they may have a different way of doing things, and it could create, globalization where you're more open, you're more informed, you're more knowledgeable in how to act or how to implement certain things to create more, more of a universal dynamic to where people can trust the organization and see that they are culturally, intelligent and open to different cultures and different dynamics and different structures. And just to know that they will, change certain things or abide by certain requirements to get those things done. So yeah, like I said, it does create a stronger organization. Going to the next slide. Power and influence. All right, so there's legitimate, reward, coercive, expert, referent. All right, so legitimate is like absolute power. That is based on, like, this is the CEO. We already know that's legitimate power. All right, this is the director. This is legitimate power. So they have the ability to use their hard power, their soft power, a little mixture of both. And those people are also able to reward and they are able to coerce because they have this absolute power. And expert is more, I would say that's more of a soft power, like being knowledgeable. It allows people to trust you and come to you in a sense. And referent, I would say, is more of a soft power too, because it's like the power of influence. And people love, knowledge, and that could be your way of influencing because if you're knowledgeable, they may, be more receptive to what you have to say and they may trust what you have to say even more. So let's go ahead into the next slide. All right, so influence tactics. So let's get into persuasion. Persuasion could be something like a intrinsic reward, allowing someone to do a project, so them feeling more responsible. That's a way to reward someone in a sense that's more internal, and then extrinsic rewards that could be something like a raise or a promotion. These are things that get people going, make them feel valued, motivate them to perform at a higher standard in a sense. So I would say that collaboration, having a champion and, surrounding team members that can support one another. And sometimes the champion, motivates others to perform at a higher, version or a higher level that they once performed. So collaboration is so important. And advising, that's where knowledge comes in. People resonate with knowledge or they may feel like your knowledge is creating value in their lives. So it's important to have that dynamic as well. And it does create inspiration as well. So these are great tactics to influence employees in an organization. Okay, so leadership and politics. In organizations, politics is going to exist. That is inevitable. You cannot run or hide from that either. So, politics do exist. Ethical use of power is important. Some people use it for good, and some people use their power for bad. So, you want to build alliances and, build alliances that are strong and act as champions. But there will be sometimes coalitions that may have an ulterior motive, but you want to reward those who are doing the right things, and that will help manage those conflicts because coalitions can be one of two things. They could be an act of championship or they could be, people with different motives or, selfish motives or, because there's going to be gossip sometimes in organizations. Um, but there's ways to manage that conflict and reward those who are doing good so that they can, create more good. It's like the good apple instead of the bad apple, the good apple is a good tree. Let's create a good tree. All right, we're going to go into the next slide. Ethical politics. We want to be transparent in organization, and it keeps the integrity going. We want to be fair in an organization because fairness will make people want to do the right things. It also just creates a better environment culturally in an organization. It create long-term focus and make people want to stay at the organization or grow and develop within the organization. And that should always be the goal within an organization because development is so important. It's because it's it's like how should I say it? It's like developing a baby into a child, into an adult, it has the same dynamic because their focus and their determination it's just going to be a little different, because they went through the growing stages within the organization. So they may have, more of a emotional connection within the organization, and they may have the best and truest intentions within the organizations. And that's just my perspective on that. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next slide. All right, leadership ethics, value guides decisions, integrity builds trust, and moral courage. I would say that kind of ties into what I was saying. It really does. Values guide decisions. Like if the values are, set within the organization, and most organizations they have their values at the forefront of the organization, and the right employees and right leadership will abide by those things, and it creates integrity and it builds trust within the organization and outside of the organization. So it's good for the internal and external stakeholders. And that creates a moral courage because if people see somebody not doing something good, it creates that moral compass to know, hey, that's not right. And it creates a whistleblower. And sometimes those whistleblowers are very much needed, to keep the organization pure. All right, so next slide. Ethical practices. Lead by example. Leading by example is so pivotal for an organization because it helps move the organization where it needs to be. It creates the right morals and it creates accountability, and then it also creates a positive culture because people see things for what they are, and they will act upon it. Like, so for an example, if a supervisor or director, he makes sure he greets everyone in the morning and says good morning, other people may follow suit and it may make the organization feel more positive, more like home based, like they feel like this is their second home, and people may be more comfortable with one another, despite the fact that they're coming from different cultures, different backgrounds, different religious beliefs. It may connect them in a way that is needed, for our organization to flourish. All right, so next slide. Servant leadership. Okay, this is my favorite. Okay, so servant leadership is someone who serves their employees, make sure that is there anything that they need, give them a place of understanding, and then empowering them to know that what their decisions, their thoughts on, decisions that need to be made are valuable and are wanted, and that helps build a community because, once someone feels understood or if the team members feel understood, they're more receptive and they're more willing and able to use the tools, use their resources to build the organization up and, just act on the purpose and the vision of the organization. And this does develop people. And I believe that it develops them internally and externally, because empowerment is so important. And it makes a difference when people have that moment to build within an organization and also develop themselves on a personal level. Okay, so next slide. Servant traits. I would say servant traits are humility, empathy, listening. We want to be able to listen to the person so that we can serve them in the best way. Like, For example, like say if you're on the phone with the customer, you can't just say, "Oh, this is what you need," without receiving what their issue is. We got to actually use our active listening to know, oh, so this is what you need, or I can help you with this, or let's troubleshoot that because this will help that. I mean, it's an example for me. I know it sounds, a little bit, but you get where I'm going with that. All right. And then stewardship, it's important to be able to be responsible, within that. So that's servant traits. All right. So let's go ahead into the next slide. Key takeaways. Leadership equals influence. Leadership is an act to do the right things ethically, morally, just following the process, living by the purpose, doing the purpose, having the vision, being able to communicate with others to create this vision or purpose and implement it. Ethics matter. You want to be able to trust that the people will do what they need to do. And diversity also strengthens that because then you're not just looking at your own perspective, you're also taking in consideration of others, which makes a huge difference because it shouldn't be a selfish thing. It should be something that there's perspective involved so you can take the next best action or step for the organization to excel. So let's go ahead into the next slide. All right, let's talk about the prompted questions. Okay, so I was prompted with 4 questions. I'm going to go ahead and read them and then I'm going to answer them. Which source of power do I resonate with? I would say referent. I definitely would say I'm more so, I like to lead by example. I would say, I like to offer knowledge and usually typically I won't say unless I really know. I like to do my research and then give like hard truth answers. I don't want you to come back to me and be like, oh, you gave me the wrong answer. So I find that to be very important for me. So I definitely resonate with referent more. Leadership communication. Reflecting on a time I experienced excellent or poor leadership communication, what strategies made it effective or ineffective? All right, so there are some managers that like to use hard power a little bit too much, but they're selfish with it. And I've noticed, who is that? Jay, one moment, please. Okay. All right, so leadership communication, reflecting on the time. Yeah, so this guy, I mean, he was very, how should I say it? He didn't really want to train me. He was very ineffective. It's like he wanted to see what I knew without providing the information, and I was new to this. So, in this sense, I would say that was hard power, but he just didn't know how to use a mix between soft and hard, which is I feel like it's more effective. So I would say if you use too much hard power, it could be ineffective. Diversity and inclusion. Why is inclusive leadership essential? What steps should leaders take to make all team members feel valued? I would say get to know them, get to know all of them, and you can't treat one person all the same. Like I have 2 kids, I wouldn't treat both of them the same. Like get to know them, learn their likes, their dislikes, and expand on that. Leadership development. How has my own leadership changed through this semester? I would say I'm more willing to challenge more. And as far as what do I need to, keep doing? I guess I will just keep implementing what I've learned. I feel like some of these things are very natural to me, but now I have vocab to it. So, now I can name it. Like a psychologist, they want to be able to name what the issue is or name the problem, like give a name for it. So it's nice to have a name for everything in a sense. And I guess I'm gonna keep this notebook on me, because this is my notebook. I've been writing all my notes in here and then like maybe just, go over it from time to time just to refresh my brain on the vocab of it all and just make sure that I'm implementing each act. That's how I would go about that. But all right, next slide is just my thank you. All right, thank you guys for watching. I gotta go tend to my kids and I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you. Bye.